Oh, hello, hello. It says I'm live, as always. Let's double check. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Oh, am I live quite yet? There's always a delay. Oh, there, that looks pretty good. Let's double check. Yes, hello, hello. Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this Wednesday. Again, regardless of where you are in the world, I hope you're having a wonderful day and hopefully staying warm. Ooh, I am here in Ontario, Canada, and boy, are we really getting cold with that temperatures outside, but as I always say, let's just stay inside and sew. So thank you everyone so much for joining me. My name is Michael Smith, the National Education Manager of Genome Canada, and I'm back to you live from my palatial estate here in Collingwood, Ontario, Canada. I'm about 2 hours north of Toronto, and it definitely feels very north today. So thank you everyone so much for joining me today, because then, yes, I've got more tips and tricks to share with you with our Sergers. There is so much we can do with our any Sergers, but of course, Genome Sergers. Oh, lovely. Hello. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. So let me flip around the camera. As always, I've got lots to share with you. Oh, Brenda's here from Florida, and it's even chilly there, too. So again, regardless of the weather, let's just stay inside and sew. And our Sergers in particular, now, most people are familiar, there we go, with Sergers. This is the fabulous Genome AT2000D air thread serger. But again, anything that I'm going to share with you today can be done on any serger, really. And where most of us are familiar with sergers, garment sewers in particular, they started out in the garment industry, and then somebody said, I could use that in my home. So look at this terrible, terrible ravelly fabric here. So when we use our serger, oh boy, yes, just let me grab something very quickly here. When we use our serger, again, we're typically going to finish off the raw edges of the fabric. There is a knife blade on the serger, but don't be intimidated by it. There is a knife blade on the serger that's going to trim away all this raw edge. If we so choose, we can also deactivate the sergers. So it's going to trim away. Let me move around here. It's going to, oh, from Germany. Hello, hello. It's wonderful. I love when technology works correctly. Again, look at all that. Boom, isn't that beautiful? All of that is in our scrap catcher here. And then when I open this up, again, look how beautiful that is. So in this case, I have both needles here, my left needle and my right needle, which you can see right there. Left needle, right needle, ooh, left needle, right needle. This is the upper looper that I see. And then these threads here on the back, that is the lower looper. So beautifully finished. Now, I'm not sure what came first, stretchy knit fabrics or sergers. They really do go hand in hand. Now, knit fabric, we don't have to worry about raveling. The knit fabric's not going to ravel, but just look, I can use that to accommodate the stretch, and my knit fabrics don't stretch out of shape. They finish the same size. So beautiful. Oh, we've got, oh, how about using our sergers with denim fabric? Again, look at your clothing. Your jeans are definitely finished with the serger. How about, especially for winter, this big, thick polar fleece? Wouldn't it be great to make something good out of that? Now, you'll notice I haven't even raised my presser foot. I haven't even adjusted my tensions. Nothing. We have a convenient side thread cutter here on our serger. And then boom, like, look at that, how beautiful that is. So sergers, yes, we can do lots of any kind of fabric. We can finish off the edges of our fabric, make it look very beautiful. But have you thought about using your serger? This is a very simple low 4 patch. You could make a whole quilt just out of 4 patches, 4 squares of fabric. You see how beautifully they are finished. I don't have to worry about a little stray fabric, little stray thread. Have you ever had that in a light color quilt and you see that stray thread on the underside Well, we don't have that with the serger. It's all beautiful. Look at my beautiful match there. So again, how simple is that? We just take our two fabrics, again, butted right sides together, an additional two fabrics here, again, butted right side together. Now you'll notice I'm not even raising my foot. I'm just butting them on one after another. I do this kind of piecing on my sewing machine as well. And it works out so well because with this serger thread in between, as I open up my pieces here, it acts as pins, so I don't have to worry about pins. And especially with our knife blade here in our serger, we definitely don't want pins being involved. So in this case, that little bit of thread in the middle acts as a pin to hold this in place as I simply go very quickly to now do this seam the other direction. I'm going to push this seam that's facing me up. This seam is going to go down, and they're just going to butt together. They're just going to lock together. So we can feel that they are flatter, and it works out so well. And again, we just butt this on very quickly. I do this again if I'm piecing on my sewing machine as well. And doing this on the serger, it just works so beautifully. So again, boom, done. Everything is beautifully finished. Look at that match. Is that not gorgeous? So beautiful. And again, any Janome serger can do this. So a simple 4-patch quilt, boom, it's done. Like so beautiful. And especially because of the extra threads here, the 2 needles and the upper looper and the lower looper, this is a very strong quilt top now. So especially as baby quilts, or if you're going to give this away as, charity quilts, they're going to be laundered a lot. Then again, super duper heavy duty. Now, if you were with me last week, was it, where I made this string quilt? It was on a foundation piece of fabric here. You could even cut up an old sheet. This is a foundation piece of fabric. And I stitched all of these strings, all of these long strips. Here's my foundation piece visible. And I stitched all these strips one after another. Stitched it on, flipped it over, stitched this on, flipped it over, stitch this on until we get all of these strings covering the foundation piece. But a question came up as I did it, well, do we have to use this foundation piece? Well, no, of course we don't have to. And of course we could make this on the machine, but here with my leftover Christmas fabric here, we just simply butt, again, right sides together. Doesn't matter what our strings look like. We can square this all up later. And I'm just simply going to, again, just butt this right on. I don't even have to lift my foot. There is a spring here on the foot of the serger. So I don't even have to lift it up at the back. If I need to lift it up, I could just lift it up with my thumb like this. That's what that big spring is for. So we could tip up our foot, butt in our fabric, feed in our fabric, and away we go. So again, this string quilt that, yes, we could piece with our serger, and it's so fast and so easy. This is where I could just spend all day doing this. And look, I don't have to worry about any of those raw edges. I can press this all out beautifully, and then we just lay our square up ruler after we get a big enough piece, lay on the square up ruler, whatever size, 6 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches, cut around it, and boom, our string quilt. Once we get our blocks done, sew them all together. Fast, super simple, easy quilt that we can make on our serger. Now, if you were also with me the other week, I think this was last week, wasn't it? They all just blend together after a while. I made this cute little trivet for our table. Now, this was on the sewing machine using the Janome circular attachment to use the decorative stitches built into our machine to make this cute little trivet. I used a stray thread. I used the Janome quilt binder attachment to bind this trivet. Here was another one. Again, there was my string pieced block that I used as a trivet. I still have to bind this one. So fast, so simple. You can go back to Janome Sewing Machine's Facebook page, Janome Canada's Facebook page, Janome America's YouTube channel, Janome Canada, Janome HQ YouTube. Here was the sample. I initially started to bind this in red, but then I ripped it off and I redid this after my live. So you'll see it's all beautifully finished with some of this Janome anniversary fabric left over, with the quilt binder attachment, again, all beautifully finished. Trivet with the circular attachment. Now, in between, to make this a trivet, I have this thermal batting in between that has this reflective surface that reflects the heat back up into our casserole dish or our glass bowls. Oh, my sister Deb is here. Hello, hello. So the cool thing is, she says, oh, sorry, I'm late. Not a problem. You can go back to review. This stays in the feed. You search the video tabs to find it. Later, you can search by my name, Michael Smith, or you can search by the project, in this case, Quilting with your Serger, what we're talking about. So the cool thing is a lot of our projects, again, the trivets I did here were on the circular sewing attachment on the sewing machine. Well, we can still use this thermal batting, and we can do, as we call, quilt-as-you-go to make a trivet. So in this case, I made a larger one. It's not a circle, it's a big rectangle. Just a couple of strips together. These are 2.5-inch strips, so great if you've got leftover jelly roll strips. 2.5-inch strips, all pieced together. Again, that Janome quilt binder attachment. Look at those beautiful miters. People say to me, oh, I've got that quilt binder attachment in my drawer. I don't like those miters. Well, you've got to get it out and practice it. There's a ton of blogs on Janome Life blog, as well as videos on Janome HQ YouTube, Janome America YouTube, to teach you all about the quilt binder attachment. So this trivet that we can make leftover batting, or again, we can use those thermo batting strips with that reflective, more heat-resistant batting. We could use this in between to make this trivet. So the cool thing is with this quilt-as-you-go technique, these are, again, 2.5-inch wide strips. So my first piece of batting, oh, it's like this. My first piece of batting here, so my strip is 2.5-inch wide. I have a strip on the bottom and a strip on top. The batting in between your very first strip of batting is 2.25. I purposely cut it down from 2.5 because I don't want to include it in this seam allowance here. When I do my seaming, oh no, it is this way. There. When I do my seaming, I do not want to have the batting in between. It just makes it a little flatter. So as I'm doing my piecing, and right here, so I have, again, a finished strip. You'll see all the seams are hidden. So I've got a finished strip on the bottom, finished strip on the top. Now, what I do here is, no, I do have it there this way. Yes, this is the way. Because as I add my strips, you'll see there is my strip on the bottom, my seam allowance. My batting is 2 inches now. I cut my batting 2 inches. So great to use up all your scraps of batting. And why it's 2 inches, again, I don't want it in the seam allowance. I have it butted up here. And then on this side, I have my 1/4 inch exposed. Now, to help make it a little skinnier, again, we can just either trim our batting a little smaller. Instead of 2 inches, I could make it, 1 inch and 3/4. But instead, I just sort of pull my batting and you'll see how it condenses it. It makes it a little smaller. So then I take my piece on the top and fold it over. But before I sew that, I'm going to add, here is another strip on the back. Again, right sides together like that, meeting the raw edges. And then I take a strip on top, again, right sides together, meeting those raw edges. And the batting, because it is 2 inches, and again, here I can tip up my foot without having to raise it, without having to reach around to the back to raise it. So that's a really good feature. I wish our sewing machines had that, actually. So you'll see now I'm going to trim. I'm going to cut this just ever so slightly, any raw edges. but I'm not going to really trim away a whole bit of fabric, just any sort of wispy raw edges. Match those together, match my raw edges here, my raw edges here, batting in between. This works out so well. Everything is beautifully finished. We're using up scraps. This, again, could be a trivet. This could be a little stand, for a plant on top, like a coaster, even a coaster for drinks, make them smaller. So you'll see everything is beautifully finished. I fold that over, beautifully finished on the back. I'll put my other, again, 2-inch strip of batting in between. Or again, it could be this thermal batting in between. Fold this over here, fold this over there. And then again, I'll get another strip. Or in this case, it would be this strip, I think. And then I would put this, again, right sides together on the top, right sides together on the bottom. Do my seam and flip it until I'm done. And then I would just square this off and then bind it with the quilt binder. So it works out really, really good. So again, this simple little trivet, or this could be a placemats, table runner, whatever. It's Quilt-as-you-go. Tons of blogs on the Janome Life blog. It works out so well. And again, all of our little strips of batting, oh, it's just wonderful. I love using up everything. So that is one project. So, another project is, well, how about even this tote bag out of regular quilting cotton? Well, this tote bag was constructed on the serger. Now, the finishing top stitching, and when I added this pocket, for example, this top stitching for the pocket was all done on the sewing machine, of course, but the pocket, very simple. I made this wonky logs block, as it's known. It's a modern version of the log cabin block. Perfect spot for that fussy cut. Tamara Kate fabric in the middle. Isn't that beautiful? But look at it, all beautifully finished on the serger. It was constructed on the serger. So when I made this block, all I did was just fold it in half and boom, there's my pocket. And then, fold it under the edges, top stitched it onto my tote bag. Very simple. Even the piping detail here was made with the serger, made on the serger. The bottom seam, side seams, the lining, everything was made on the serger. So simple, so easy to do. Here is a table runner using that wonky logs block. You would never know from the right side that this was pieced on the serger. On the back side, of course, you see it's all beautifully finished. Don't have to worry about, again, those stray, again, like those dark threads that would show that are caught in the seam allowance. You don't have to worry about that. They're all trimmed off. They're so beautiful. So yes, we can construct, again, in this case, this could be a whole quilt. This could be a bed runner at the end of the bed. Put some batting and, backing on it. And this could be the bed runner at the foot of the bed. So you keep your feet nice and warm, especially now when it's been very, very cold here. Or this, again, could be a table runner. Could be so many projects. So you can piece with your serger. Speaking of log cabin here, how about, this is a traditional log cabin. Again, so long as it's a straight line, why not with your serger? Do you know our sergers are on average about twice the speed of a regular sewing machine? Most sewing machines are about the average, around 800 stitches per minute. Most sergers are about 1,000 to 1,200 stitches per minute. So super fast. Now, Janome has very fast sewing machines too. But again, on average, they're about 800 stitches per minute. So sergers are almost, twice as fast. You just Google log cabin, and here these instructions came out. I printed them for free. I changed my measurement slightly, but this is my guide. And whenever I do all of this cutting, either for my sewing machine or for my serger, this is one of my big square up rulers, acrylic square up rotary cutting rulers. I wrapped it with scraps of batting. Again, I save everything. So I just zigzagged my batting together so I could then fold it over my ruler. I use green painter's tape to tape it to the ruler, so it's not going to gum up and make my ruler sticky when I remove this batting. But this way, I cut all my pieces, and there, I carry this, so my pieces aren't going to fall apart. I carry it to my sewing machine or my serger. I have them all laid out according to my little diagram here. And then boom, would you know that this block has been sewn on the serger? You would never know until you look at the backside. Now, again, as a baby quilt, as a charity quilt, a quilt that's going to get a lot of use, maybe a quilt for the car, in case you're, stuck in the traffic and you want to bundle up, you've got a quilt for the car. Super simple, easy to make. With our serger, as with our sewing machine, we need to make sure our seam allowances are accurate when we try to piece things together. You'll look, my top block here is about 1/2 inch smaller than my bottom block as I match these two corners up here, and you'll see, oh boy, they're not the same measurement. Well, I realized after I eyeballed what I thought was about 1/4 inch, I take my little Janome ruler here and I notice my seams are just a little too generous. And normally that wouldn't be a problem, but because I have a seam here and a seam here and a seam here and a seam here, by the time this seam was a little too generous, that's a little too generous, that's too generous, that's too generous. Well, that's how this block ended up too small. When I refined my seam allowances, and we would do this on a sewing machine as well as the serger here, they turned out, boom, much better. So my finished block here, in this case, finishes 8 inches. Again, look how perfect that is. Everything is so beautifully pressed and flat, so simple on the serger. And how I achieved that, we get the fabulous cloth guide for our Janome sergers, and they fit all the sergers. So long as your serger there's a little screw in the front of, I think, all Janome sergers. And so long as you have that screw, you open your looper cover here, you have that screw to attach this cloth guide. So simple. Screwdriver comes included with your serger. You can get them in a blister pack as well. And this cloth guide, again, there is an adjustable screw up here at the top. So you measure from which needle, your right needle or left needle. In this case, I've got both. So I'm using from my left needle. I'm going to measure over whatever my seam allowance is. Here on our AT2000D and most of our sergers, we have these little tick marks and a measurement here. So if I'm a garment sewer and I'm going to sew like the polo shirt, that I'm wearing, the jersey that I'm wearing, I would measure over from my left needle 5/8 of an inch. And oh, look, there happens to be a little tick mark here on our looper cover. I line up my cloth guide with that tick mark, and then I can tighten this on, and boom, now I have a perfect 5/8 of an inch seam line. In this case, I'm going to do for 1/4 of an inch for my typical quilt piecing. Now, there are some marks here on our needle plate. There is a groove. It's about just a little shy of the knife blade is the 1/4 of an inch groove that's on our needle plate. But I love having a guide, like a fence, metal guide. Again, we've got our Janome O-foot, for example, for the sewing machine that has a metal guide that keeps our seams accurate. So here for our serger, same thing with this cloth guide. I tightened it up to 1/4 of an inch. I started piecing this a little early, again, from the center out. We just keep going around in the circle to do our log cabin piecing. Now, if you go on the Inspire tab of janome.com and janome.ca, there are some log cabins. You just use the search box and just type in the Inspire tab. You then go to projects, and then you type in log cabin, and you will find some log cabin projects. And then with that knife blade, there's my little trail of serger thread. We remove, we have a thread cutter here at the side. Boom, look how beautiful that is. Beautiful on the back side. And we're going to press our seam allowances all to the outside. This is my center square. My seam allowances all go to the outside. Now I could go take this to the iron, but instead I'm just going to press it with my fingers here. And then, then I need to add my next one. And again, I keep my little cheat sheet here next to me so I know which strip I'm adding. In this case, it's another dark. The cool thing about the log cabin, it's a very traditional block, one of the oldest blocks on record. And they started in the center, the yellow in my case, was the hearth of the home for the fireplace, the center of the home. And then we have the dark strips were unfortunately, the sad things that happen in life to all of us. But the light strips are what we generally try to focus on. And we appreciate the light more because of the darkness. So that's kind of the history of the log cabin. Look at how beautiful that is. Seam allowances pressed, boom, done. Everything. I find I am actually a more accurate piecer on the serger than I am on the sewing machine. It just, because we've got the feed dogs, they just grab your fabric, and we've got an upper feeding mechanism as well as the lower feeding. So this is where on our sewing machines, we have our even feed and dual feed foot or AccuFeed flex feet. The sergers, it's basically built in. The feeding is built in, upper and lower feeding built in. This is why, boom, our log cabin, so perfect. So that is a fast, easy, simple project. You make a ton of blocks and then you piece them all together. The cloth guide, I'm assuming you're will it fit the 12,000D? There were specific accessories just for the 12,000D. We do not have that machine in Canada anymore. So if you're in America, you can go on Janome.com. They will have the 12,000D, or actually in our Janome accessory catalog that is available on all Janome subsidiaries around the world. The 12,000D is still listed in the accessory catalog. So there you can find your part number for that cloth guide for that machine specifically. And I double check with your Janome dealer. Now, speaking of sergers, there is for the AT2000D, well, there is a workbook. But, even if you don't have the air thread serger, the sergers are more similar than they are different. And many people say, oh, I'm so intimidated by my serger. So even if you don't have the air threading portion of the serger, adjusting your cutting width, for example, it's the same on all sergers. The dials may be a little different, but gathering on your serger, it's the same adjustments regardless of the serger. So this AT2000D workbook really is good as far as the techniques, the exercises, how you can adjust your serger using different threads, how to perfect your rolled hem. Again, you may be adjusting your serger slightly different, but all of that is in here. So it's still a good resource. So you can double check with your Janome dealer about the AT2000D workbook. Another fast, easy project you can do, this rail fence quilt. This is another classic quilt block. In this case, I used 6 strips of various widths. Typically the rail fence or the same size strips, there's usually 3 of them. But in this case, I did 6 of them. All beautifully finished on the serger, so fast, so easy. And the cool thing is with these rail fence blocks, they're so simple to do. One block, then when you finish them, you see how my light blue is up here. They're horizontal. Your first block is horizontal. Your second block then is vertical. So there is your light blue. It forms like a little chain of the rail fence. And then so this next block here would go, I could do it this way. So then I got the blue and blue, or then I typically then again would repeat it. So then it would be, like the beginning block. So then my light blue is at the top, my light blue is at the top, and you form like this little chain. So rail fence, super simple, easy to do. When we're doing our strip piecing, again, we take a long strip, in this case, my red, was the long strip, and then I just butted on my shorter strips onto it and just chained piece. I do this on the sewing machine as well, and just chain piece. And you see, you just butt one on after another, and then you will just cut this apart where the blue is. Fold that over, press that over, and your blocks go together. So fast, so simple. So the 12,000D was the combination. It was a serger and a cover hem machine in one. Janome Canada did have it for a number of years, and then we discontinued it. And now we have separate sergers and cover hem machines. But in America, they still are distributing, I believe, the 12,000D. In some other parts of the world, they're still carrying that machine. So that's why in our Janome accessory catalog, you can find the parts for that machine. Because it was a combo machine, it's very special, so it has its own parts. So again, for strip piecing, so simple. I have this big, long strip. Here are my smaller strips. And again, with my serger cloth guide, how simple is that? Now, again, I just butt this on. I leave a little bit of daylight in between so then I can square these up as I go along. I learned all these techniques from the fabulous Eleanor Burns at Quilt in a Day. And, you know, she was quilting on her serger way back in the 90s, way before anybody else did. So what I'm demonstrating is really not new. But as they say, what's old is new again. And it just works out so good. So again, we just keep adding our strips one after another after another. Again, side, thread cutter, boom. How simple is that? Leave a little daylight in between. So when I press these over, again, I can either just finger press, or when I would take this to my table, and then I would cut this off. So then it would square up. So isn't that beautiful? The 12,000D was a combo serger and cover hem machine. There is a Memory Craft 12,000 sewing machine, which is an embroidery and sewing machine combo. So yes, the D stands for differential feed. That's where is sort of the built-in feeding of our machine, of how we can control the differential feed. Here in our AT2000D, the differential feed is integrated in with the stitch length, but then in most of our sergers, there's two separate dials. The differential feed is separate. So if a serger in particular has a D after the model number, it stands for differential feed. So the 12,000D was a serger and cover hem machine combo. And then there is a Memory Craft 12,000, which is a sewing machine and embroidery combo machine. So yes, we must keep our model numbers separate. This quilt, very quickly, as the last thing I'll show, all piece, this was on the Janome Life blog, all this checkerboard piecing was done on the serger. This is also a Quilt-as-you-go. I did all of my embroidery, but then you'll see on my backside here of my quilt, again, there is the seam. It's all beautifully finished. They were right sides together, but here is the seam. It's all exposed, but because of all that extra serger thread, this quilt is actually a picnic blanket for the kids to play with. Can wash and dry and no problem. And even the accent here of this yarn, I used the beading foot for the serger. Super simple. I didn't want to bind this, so I just put on some yarn to couch it with the beading foot on the serger. So there is so much we can do with our sergers. Double check again our accessory catalog, and then double check with your fabulous Janome dealer. So let me flip around, because yes, as always, the time goes by so fast, but there's just so many things we could do. The main thing is you just have to get your machines out and use them. But of course, you go on our respective Janome websites, the Inspire tab, and find free projects. Check the accessory catalog. There's so much available for all of our Janome machines, including Sergers. Double check our Janome Life blog. Again, a number of Serger projects and Serger techniques. And of course, go back to these respective lives as well. So much on the Serger, and look forward to more as a little sneak peek coming up in more lives. So thank you everyone so much for joining me today. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye.